You're right. You look a bit better when you're looking down on yourself.
It looks a bit weird.
less
less chin.
Yeah. Right.
There you are.
See there? That's working.
There you are.
Then how do we tell if anyone...
You can see it in a second.
Can see my mum. Hi, Mum.
Hey, Mum. Take just a couple of seconds. So there's a slight lag.
Oh, lag sucks.
No. It's just the recording.
8 people.
8 people. 10 people.
10 people. Now, so how do I... Oh, there's George. Hi, George.
Yeah, just look at that. Don't look at this one.
Hope you liked your chicken schnitzel for dinner, George.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
You're just saying hello to everyone.
My arm's sore already.
Too bad.
This looking down thing's stupid.
There you go. See?
Oh, hi, Fritz. Blake. Oh, this is like at play school.
Yeah,
you know, like,
magic mirror.
Yeah, magic mirror on play school.
You're showing your age.
And you can start saying, oh, hi, Alan, in the magic window. So, oh, we're going good.
Oh, good.
Right, so if we look out for some questions, and in the meantime, I've got a delay, don't I? I've got 2 more minutes. 2 minutes to delay.
Hang on. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got 2 minutes to delay. Yeah. So after that, let's just start moving.
There's a bear in there.
We shall explain the process. Oh, I haven't seen Marcus for a while, since he moved.
Okay, I've just said if anyone's got any questions, post now. Questions.
Cool, I can type and talk all at once.
Yeah.
I didn't think through this
arm thing.
arm stand. I just think we've got... we're having beers. Yeah, we've actually got some wine. And it's actually pretty nice. I had enough thought to get wine, not enough to get glasses.
So no drinking from the bottle, Bub.
No, why not? I'll do this, ready? There you go. It was a glass, honest. All right. Very exciting. All right, guys. So can you keep an eye on questions for me?
Yeah. Okay.
Because I'll get very distracted and start forgetting that it's even meant to be a Q&A.
Yeah.
Does the carpet match the curtains? It certainly does, Brad, and thanks for that question.
Well, you can see the questions anyway, so you're all right.
Yeah, I know, but they'll go past. Are blue spot stingrays hard to... yeah, very. They can... So are blue spot stingrays hard to eat? They certainly can be. And even if they do eat, they're still hard to keep. So unless you've got a monster tank, then not a good idea. All right, so I'll talk everyone through the process of what I was thinking. So basically what I was thinking, besides drinking, is to go through a list of just subjects. Oh, look at that. There it is. That's I would like to raise. And I am very ready to get distracted with any questions anyone gets. And so I'm thinking we do this for about an hour. And however far we get in an hour is fine. So even if we don't do any of these topics, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a bit of fun. And we hopefully we learn something, and hopefully we have a bit of fun. Mm-hmm. So you're going to post, let me know when there's questions. Do any species of flatworm affect Goniopora? I would imagine they do, but I don't stop and recall that really happening. So things like euphyllias and caterphillias, I have a lot of trouble with flatworms. But no, I haven't seen them on Goni, but I imagine they would.
We've got some over there with flatworm.
Okay, so now let's start at the beginning. Can you be the question checker? And now what I'm going to start with is that at the end of the day, I believe that saltwater tanks are very easy to keep. Ooh. Providing that you learn the 8 principles. So if you want to learn the 8 principles, then what I'm going to do is suggest you jump on Majestic Aquariums TV on YouTube and then just write 8 principles. And then there's basically 8 rules that you really want to get your head around, because it's absolutely my opinion that anytime anything's not going all that well, you can go back and check the 8 principles again, and you'll find that the principle that you've forgotten or you just didn't really understand is your problem. So my aim as far as being an aquarium advisor is concerned is just keeping everything as absolutely simple as possible. So often people look for big fancy problems, and most of the time it isn't anything fancy. Most of the time it's just something basic that is your problem. So rule number 1, make sure you understand the 8 principles. Even if you're an experienced dude and maybe you've never seen the 8 principles, or maybe you've seen them so long ago that it exceeds your memory, it's really worth going and watching it again, because you'll find it very helpful. So we've got a question. Can you read the questions? That'd be really cool.
Flagfin, angel, and a juvenile emperor just won't stop going at him. What are my options without giving him away?
Okay, so flagfin and a juvenile emperor. Really, that's absolutely just coming down to, will your dog get along with my dog? So things that you can do is, if you've got one in there that's attacking the other one, thing number 1 you can do is remove that fish for a period of time. So if you've got a quarantine tank or something, then you could give your main tank a rearrange, and then the idea is to reintroduce the aggressive fish to a territory in which the more peaceful fishes had an advantage to monopolize. Because what you really don't want to do is have an angel and then it's dominating the tank, and then introduce another angel. That's, I'm assuming, the trouble that you're having. So rearranging the tank is a really helpful way. And then also to remember that you just can't win them all. I mean, sometimes they just don't want to get along. So that's something that you do just have to be aware for. And having a quarantine tank is really key here, because you've got the ability to play with the fish introductions.
Aquapora display at the moment?
Do you guys have an Aquapora display, Ivan? We sure do. So I'm going to show you a sleepy tour of our... Oh, what's going on? Oh, hang on, I'm doing something. Sorry, phone. Okay, so here's a nighttime tour. So because we have radions and I'm not gonna... Yeah, we can turn them on. I know that Callan gets angry at me whenever I do this stuff. No, alright, don't worry about it. It was a nighttime tour anyway. So let's pursue our nighttime tour. Now, if you look at this tank, you will see how fast everything's growing. The rate that these corals are all growing is absolutely off its head. So here's our SPS nighttime tour, and here's an LPS nighttime tour. And for anyone that doesn't know the very basic terminology, LPS just means large polyp, and SPS means small polyp. So in general, the SPSs are considered to be harder to keep. They need more stable water. So the system that we're running here, we've got a dosing system, we've got lots of wave makers, we've got heaps of water flow, we've got heaps of lights, we've got skimmers, we've got reactors, keto reactors. So anyway, there you go, Ivan. Nice. Awesome. So there's our sleepy tour of our
And do we have any specials on that?
specials on them.
On Aqua?
Yeah, I think we do actually at the moment. I think we do have specials on Acro. I don't know the prices because I don't get down there very much, but yes, I think we do.
Yeah, cool.
Now, what other prices have we got going? What other questions have we got going on?
Copperband butterfly doesn't eat, but constantly checks the rocks.
Yeah, so sort of like that's pretty common. So getting copperbands to eat can be challenging at the best of time. I've certainly seen them eat. I've seen them go on to even dry food, but as a generalization, very difficult. So most people that are going to try a fish like that, it's all about weaning. So you'll start off, you'll put it in there. It'll have lots to feed on at the start, depending on the size of the aquarium. And then as it starts to pick around the environment and use up the food sources that it's preferencing, then it's not uncommon that it's going to start to starve. So you've got a couple of options. One is just feed your tank more, and feeding your tank more is going to put more nutrients in the environment and hopefully grow more microorganisms and so forth. And if your tank's big enough, maybe you're going to get away with that. Otherwise, being prepared for live foods. So things like brine shrimp, getting a stable source of live brine shrimp will be a challenge. Like sometimes getting hold of eggs or getting hold of brine shrimp. And the idea is to feed them the brine shrimp regularly enough for them to build trust in you and for them to settle in. And I really do notice too with butterflies, particularly copperbands, but they just seem to go better as a pair. Like whenever I used to do a lot of diving before I got old and fat, and I used to notice a lot, particularly with butterflies, is that they'll always seem to be in a pair. And even if like one loses the other one, it just seems to freak out a bit until it meets the other one. So they just seem happier and more settled as a pair. So if you had them in a nice big tank with plenty of reef for them to scavenge around, and you had a good supply of live food, particularly until they settle in enough and they get to know you and trust what you're feeding, you could then wiggle them onto frozen foods and then potentially even onto dry foods. That is not the norm, but I absolutely have seen it happen. But basically, at the end of the day, very, very challenging fish.
Which one do you want to link up?
Okay, so are you showing the 8 principles?
Yep. Which one do you want to pop? And I'll just put the link on.
Okay, no, well, if they just go to the search bar and try 8 principles, and then you just watch the 8 videos. So there's...
That one?
I think that's an introduction. That's principle 8. Oh, look at that. I'm very good at not aiming at the right place. Righty, what's our next question? Hi, John, Billy.
He asked if you have any special ones, not on special.
Oh, yeah, we definitely have specials, but I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So the answer, Ivan, is definitely yes. But you really need to speak to Luke or Callan because...
They know their stuff.
Yeah, I just don't get in there and look at them enough.
Right,
I look
no
at them
more
and go,
questions.
oh, they're pretty. Okay, so let's go back to the plan. So, what's that one? Cool. Okay, so we just had a quick chat about the 8 principles, basically saying that it's my opinion that a saltwater tank is very easy to keep as long as you address those 8 principles. Now, the next little conversation I want to have is value versus dream tank. So when you're buying an aquarium, I really would be aware, if you're buying your dream tank, if you're buying your forever tank, you really want to treat it differently. You really want to get the biggest tank you can. You really want to get the best equipment you can, because the more money you spend now, or the more you make the right decisions now, just the better your tank will be and the more you'll save in livestock. Now, there are other, let's say, options. Like, for example, Aqua One's new tank. Fabulous value. I wouldn't have it as my forever tank. I wouldn't have it as my dream tank. But if you're looking at getting a tank and you're looking at getting started, really, really fabulous value.
Give your arm a rest.
Oh, no, I was sort of getting used to
Are
it.
you all right? Okay.
Yeah, I was sort of like, yeah, look at that. All right, so, so point number 1 is when deciding... Oh, what did that do?
We'll Paul give me a discount if I upgrade.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll give you a discount. Yep. Of course I will. Okay, so we've talked about that. We've had a quick chat about that. tank size. This is a really simple one. So just to be clear, I've been selling aquariums for 24 years and and never once have I ever had anyone say, oh, I wish I got the small one. But you always wish that you got the bigger tank. I got wine in my eye. Got a bit of red wine in my eye. Oh well, anyway. So as far as getting the tank size, you need to get the biggest tank possible. And then you try not to let like your wife or your husband be a reason not to get a good tank. So my advice with them is if your husband or your wife won't let you get a 4-foot tank, the plan is you go in for a 10-foot, because often they're quite prepared to compromise. So it's about where you finish that matters, not where you start. No, but it's serious. If you go in and tell your wife you want a 4-foot tank, you're going to be lucky to end up with a 2-foot tank. Ask for an elephant, get a kitten. Exactly right. Go in and just say you want to spend $40,000 and you want a 10-foot tank, and then when she freaks out, then you can compromise back and probably end up with the tank that you wanted. So as far as tank size is concerned, the bigger the tank, the better. Nobody ever comes in and wishes they got the small tank. You always wish it was bigger. The fish settle in, everyone looks happy, and then you think, oh, come on, it could have been a bit bigger. Now let's have a quick chat about tank shape.
I have a question.
As soon as, 1 second.
Right.
Now, so as far as tank shape is concerned, the longer the better. The wider the better. I'd say sort of 30 inches, 3 foot, awesome width. Much over that, and it does become more of a chore. Like 2 foot by 2 foot, you really can't go wrong. That's a really tried and tested and simple size. As far as really big tanks are concerned, the really tall ones, as far as my opinion is that it's awesome, particularly if it's somebody else's. Because as soon as you start going above 30 inches, when you need to do everything with tongs, it's just annoying. I'd go 30 inches tall as a maximum, 30 inches to maximum 3 foot wide, and then as long as you want. And what I will try definitely not to do is go higher than I do wide. Otherwise, instantly you've got issues with surface area to volume ratios. So it makes it harder to place all your corals and stuff. Now, what are you playing games for? What's that game anyway?
Just come good UV sterilizer.
Okay, what would be good UV sterilizer for 120? Not something which will clear the water. Okay, so...
It actually work on pathogens.
Yeah, so that thing didn't work on my phone because it was rang then. Okay, so as far as UV sterilizer, first thing to do is realise the difference between a clarifier and a sterilizer. So most that you buy on the market are really clarifiers, so they're really for ponds to clear the water up, to get a bit of algae and bacteria out of the water. But in order to get one that's going to do pathogens, that's only a relatively small tank. So if you try to put in a UV sterilizer that's over 18 watts, really I'd be looking at say 36 watts, and then you want to run relatively low flow through it, because if you go pumping too much water through it, then the contact time will be too low, and then you're not going to get a very good kill rate. So I've read whole books on sizing UVs and all the rest of it, but in general it's all just a load of crap. Just get yourself a bigger one than you need and you're pretty much okay. There's very little downside to having a UV that's too big. So I'd be looking at above 18 watts, really 36 watts, and running a slow flow through it. Maybe turn the tank over twice an hour or something like that. I would not be zipping the water through it. Otherwise you're not going to get any sort of kill rate. Now what other questions we got there?
We got general. The people will just come online.
So,
yeah, this one.
Yep, got my...
425, happy. But she only just found out what it cost.
Oh yeah, yeah, you get that. Okay, now let's go through the next thing. Now tank position. Now tank position is really, really simple. So really away from direct sunlight where we get a chance, and you really want to have it where you can enjoy it. So you got to think about access. So upstairs is never as good as downstairs, because when you find yourself lugging the salt up and down, after a while it's not as fun as you think. Good exercise. And then really in proximity to the television is really the ideal place, because the dream is if you sit there on your lounge, you've got your TV, you've got your fish tank, it's all in that sort of area where you're likely to be spending your time. Things like studies, spare rooms, anywhere you're not, or the pool room that you only go in when your mates come over, not as often as you'd like as you get older and your mates don't come over. That's really the key. You want it somewhere where you're going to spend time with it.
Do we sell?
Now, question, do you guys sell calc stirrers? Yeah, I've got some calc stirrers in stock. Yeah, I think they're great if you use them carefully. So what a calc stirrer does is basically just stir calcosa, so you can slowly introduce lime water into the aquarium. And it's a great way of maintaining pH. It'll have a positive effect on phosphates. It's really a good thing if you're going to use it properly. And yes, we do have them in stock. So if you're looking for that extra little thing that's going to maintain your pH and give your tank that little bit of an edge, and maybe you've got nothing else to buy, I think, yeah, I do like them. I definitely don't rate them as a you must have. They're definitely not a must have, but there's definitely benefit in having it.
You've had a few suggestions as to where the tank should be, near beer fridges, near the toilet, all the good stuff.
Yeah, well, that's probably well worth. Yeah, the toilet. That's like. I guess ultimately, now that I'm thinking about it, if I'm going to be totally honest, where am I going to spend the most of my time? I may as well just have it in the toilet with the fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like. I can feel the hemorrhoids now.
And Cameron said you'd come over if you asked him more.
If what?
If you asked him more, you'd come over.
Oh, I thought I was banned from Cameron's house anyway. That's what Tim said, but he's a liar, so. Alright, so now where'd we get to? Let's see what's going on here. Alright, so now let's have a quick chat about Sump's Media and Auto Top Up. So, now Sump's super simple. The bigger the sump, the better it is, and the more you can do with it. And so let's just draw some basic sump designs. So what I had pre-planned here is, that's a fish tank, and then that's a sump. So as far as if you're going to put the tank hard against the wall, you might decide to put a weir in it, such as this. Then you're going to have a sump. And I'll just explain why I've drawn it like this. So the water goes down that. You have like a dorso or something here to try and make sure it's not too noisy. Now the first thing is mechanical filtration. First thing I'll say is that I hate filter socks. Now the reason why I hate filter socks is they clog up really fast, and basically every time that I go to someone's house, the water's just pissing out of the top of the filter sock because they haven't cleaned it for a few days. And when you clean it, you got to go turn it inside out, blast it with the hose. I'm just not into it. Some people throw them in the washing machine, all sorts of stuff, but not into it. Other option is obviously a bit of filter wool. That'll clog up. I mean, I'm just totally Polyfilter fan. And the reason why I love Polyfilter is that I'll just chuck a bit of Polyfilter there, and literally it's good to go for months. If I can clearly see that, as I look, I'll go, all right, well, it's not black. And then I just leave it in there till it's black. I get fabulous results from it. People will say, oh, but it's so expensive. Well, you know what? I'd rather pay a bit more for it and not be outside turning my socks inside out, hosing them, throwing them in the washing machine. No way. I'd rather pay a little bit more. And also that'll cling all your particles. It will take everything out of solution that shouldn't be in solution. It won't remove anything that should be in solution. It's color-coded to tell you what it removes. It takes out. I just love it. So anyway, that's what I would do. I would put Polyfilter there. Then what happens next is the water's going to come around here. And this is where my skimmer's going to be. And then the most important thing about a skimmer is a fixed water level. You never want to put your skimmer here, or it's never going to work properly, because even if you have a top up, it's still going to be a fluctuating water level. You really need to have your skimmer here. So if you have like a nice big skimmer, it's going to go there. So your skimmer's going to go here, then the water's going to go over here. Now the next thing that I'm wanting is some biomedia, and I am extremely biased towards Marine Pure. So Marine Pure was produced for the wastewater industry. It's the only one that's really had the research that allows the formation of nitrifying, denitrifying bacteria without anoxic bacteria. Then the water will come over here. This is where I'll often chuck my heaters. So here's my heaters. And then I'll have my return pump here that'll go and just return the water back to the aquarium again. So this is super simple and works really great. Mechanical, skimming, biological, heating, and then ultimately top up. So you're going to want a top up unit of some description somewhere. So that might have a little valve here, and it might. So top up is something to consider. So in a perfect world, you could have a top up which is like a big barrel or something. The more water that you hold in your top up, the less often you got to obviously fill it up. So top up is definitely something you want to look at.
You've got one over there for
No, I'm too comfortable here now. We've got sump filter, we've got media, and we've got, I do want to, that's what it was, a Q&A, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. All right. Followed your advice on hyposalinity and like it, but maintaining pH is difficult with it. How do you handle it?
Well, it is. So I don't know what my advice was, but I'm assuming my advice was when you're getting new fish, I will lower the salinity. So I've got a whole section on that. But what you can do is when you're adding your fresh water, don't just put RO in it. Otherwise, the first thing that's going to happen is your pH is just going to bomb out. So if you go and put buffer in the fresh water when you put it in there, that will fix that. So that doesn't have to be a problem if you're not just adding RO. You can just buff your RO water before you put it in there. So that really doesn't actually have to be a problem.
Do we have this?
Cyparex, no, I don't. Just because I love Marine Pure. Like, there's lots of suppliers I can buy it from, and I just sell Marine Pure.
Yeah, I love Marine Pure.
Yeah, I can get it. If you wanted it, I can get it. I can match prices. I can, whatever you want. All good.
Something about Polyfill not doing
Now, someone said, what, no Refugium? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So this is a Refugium, and I'm going to suggest the best Refugium that you'll ever get. So Refugium basically just means safe place. Now, people will go and make a whole tank, and they'll make a Refugium out of it. So they'll put algae, they'll put microorganisms, live rock, whatever they want, in a separate tank as a Refugium. And all these same processes are occurring within the Marine Pure itself. The other thing is that as far as algae control and all the rest of it, if I was going to do anything, I'd probably put a Chaeto reactor on it. But I find that when I get my levels right, and I've got my dosing system working efficiently, because a dosing system, that's something else we're going to talk about later on, a dosing system is everything. When you get your levels right, I really don't grow a lot of advanced algae at all, because my nutrient levels end up being too low. So in regards to a Refugium, that absolutely is a Refugium, and it's absolutely my favourite type of Refugium. So definitely yes.
Had Polyfill, but only ever seen it brown.
Oh, okay, that's because, so your Polyfill, you threw it out.
Yeah.
So basically, he's probably just impatient.
By the colours that go.
It goes all sorts of pretty colours, but basically what normally happens is it starts off white, and then as it starts to pick up nutrients and organics, it'll then turn yellow, then it will turn brown, then dark brown, and then eventually black. And so a lot of people see it dirty, freak out, and chuck it out. And then they'll go, oh, that was expensive. But a lot of the time, you don't have to chuck it out when it's black, when it's brown. You can wait for it to go black. So what a lot of people will do is they'll put the polyfilter in, and then as it starts getting dark, then they might put a new bit on top, but the bit underneath, they'll still leave it until it turns black, because, or at least dark brown. So you just got to leave it in a bit longer, and it will turn brown. If it goes most of the other pretty colours, it usually means that there's something going on with it. Now, more questions?
No, that's what we're up to.
So
hang on. Upkeep, saltwater versus tropical.
Oh, okay, this is an interesting one. So upkeep, saltwater versus tropical. Now, so tropical is obviously a wide spectrum. Something like cichlids are almost like a piece of furniture. So in regards to the scope of tropical fish, keeping a cichlid tank, as far as I'm concerned, keeping a saltwater tank is a hobby, and keeping a freshwater tank is a piece of furniture. Like, I have customers that lets gyms and doctors' surgeries and things that they call me when they want it serviced. And some of them are like, it's been like a year. No one else has done anything besides top it up and feed it. And realistically, it looks pretty good. Now, as far as plant tanks are concerned, so plant tanks can be worse than a reef tank. So this is a night view, of one of our plant tanks there. And with all the trimming and they can be just as challenging. So I'm going to say a really serious plant tank can rival a saltwater tank, but as a long and short answer, I'd say no. I would say that saltwater is a hobby, and freshwater is a piece of furniture. So if you're going to get into saltwater, just be ready. Be ready to have a hobby. Be ready to get involved.
Someone's just asked everything.
Can you buff your RO water with lime? Yeah, you can. Just remember with lime, like calcium hydroxide or whatever, it's a lot of time it's very unstable. So you definitely can, but if you start playing with that, start with really low levels and then slowly raise it. Because if you do use some of those lime products, you'll find the pH goes up super fast, but then it can collapse super fast too. So yes, you can, but playing with the more stable ones, you're sort of, sort of like your more run-of-the-mill calcium, magnesium, aquarium products. They're just heaps safer because they're much more stable. So definitely you can, but you just want to be a little bit more careful how you go about it and start slow. We have another question. We haven't had many inappropriate questions yet, which is boring. Okay, so I'll go back to my if it fails list. Okay, so protein skimmer. Now, as far as a protein skimmer is concerned, let's go back here again. It's really simple. The bigger and the better the skimmer, the better. Now, the most important thing of all is how often you clean the skimmer. Now, when I say clean the skimmer, what I basically mean is that part of the neck. Because if you leave your skimmer, so first of all, I'll just go through if anyone doesn't know. Bubbles are coming up. And then the organics are going to bond with the bubbles. And the organics are going to come up. And then all of the waste is going to get caught out in this little collection cup, such as this. There you go, George. So all the bubbles are coming up here, and this is working beautifully on our nighttime acro tank. So the most important thing about a skimmer, besides the design and all the rest of it, is really how often you clean it. So when you clean it, I get in trouble for touching this, by the way, is if you just get like something almost like a toilet brush, not the one you use in your toilet, preferably, but got to do what you got to do. And then you just give all the inside of that a wipe out. And then what you're doing is getting rid of the fatty acids and the bacteria and crap that builds up there. Then you'll find it just skims again. Now, some of the new ones, like the Red Sea ones, they've got a little doobie in it. They're all cool. Some of them have even got, some of the Octo ones have got automatic ones. They're cool too. But at the end of the day, if you just lifted that lid off and you just gave that a cleany on the inside, then that's really all you have to do. Then after a week or two, once that builds up, then you can take that out. You can either drain it through you can either put a little drain device on it or just pull that out. Awesome for the garden, fabulous for practical jokes. And the more often you clean the skimmer, the better off it is. I even did some parallel testing many years ago with very average protein skimmers and versed them against very good protein skimmers, and found that if the very good one, if the not so good one was cleaned very regularly, the difference between the good one and the not so good one was less. But if you don't clean it regularly, the good one really was better. So the better the skimmer, the better. So now let's go see if there's any more questions.
Someone asked what colour bra you're wearing.
Bra? Well, it's a clear one actually. So that's a...
And someone's worried that you may have offended the freshwater guys because you just called their hobby a piece of furniture.
Well, you know what? If I don't offend at least a few people, then I haven't. I'm losing it.
It says, ouch, did you just diss the freshwater guys? Reefing a hobby. Freshwater is just furniture. Watch your back, these guys are dangerous.
Yeah, well, honestly, I've been saying that for so long, and they're all talk. So so anyway, next. Death threats. Bring on the death threats.
Okay.
It's amazing how many death threats you get being in the
aquarium
aquarium
industry.
industry.
How much is it? Much more complicated. A bigger question. We'll just
I'll just talk about it. So basically, if you want to take on a saltwater tank, you want to take on a hobby. You want to learn about it. You want to get involved in it. You want to watch YouTube videos about it. You want to take an interest in it. For example, and if you don't do that, it's going to fail. You can have someone come once a month and look after it for you, but all they're really doing is cleaning it. They're not really owning it and loving it. You really got to own it. You got to love it. You got to. If you don't want to learn about it, if you don't want to watch YouTube videos on it, if you don't want to be intrigued into why something's doing something, don't do it. Because I think the saltwater really is a hobby, and when you open yourself up to the active learning and the wonder of why, how, when, and what's going on, it really is awesome. But if that isn't your thing, then I think maybe collect stamps or something like that. That would be a better hobby for, don't you think? But and then with the saltwater, with the freshwater, I mean, like some of the cichlid tanks, when you set them up right, it's super easy. So once again, if you want something cool that looks in your home, and you want something that you don't have to fuss about too much, that you got to do something wrong for them to die, then go get a cichlid tank. You know, you could even put some fake coral in there and make it look like a real saltwater tank. You know, knock yourself out. But I think for me, it's a different customer.
Yeah.
When someone comes in, you can see it in their eye that they're excited and they're really keen to learn, and that's someone that is going to succeed with a saltwater tank. And be ready to fail. You've got to take a step forward and a step back sometimes, and just keep your eye on the goal, which is to have a beautiful tank and to really learn that the tank is what the tank is. Like, a lot of people get very attached to what they think the tank should do, but a saltwater tank is all about watching what's going on and then seeking to understand and react to whatever's going on in the tank. And a freshwater tank, you feed it, water change it every now and then, and clean the filter if it stops, and you're sweet. It's a different customer.
It's not a hobby, it's an investment.
Well, you
time and money.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
It's
Someone
definitely an
asked,
addiction.
what sort of ponds or fish do you have at home?
Well, I've got like a fighting fish.
You've got one fighting fish.
Yeah, for the kids, and I actually watch it all the time, believe it or not. But I don't think that's that healthy, because I'm actually at home, believe it or not, I'm into birds.
Yeah.
Because I've got like owls and like all the birds in my backyard, and so like my backyard is like my fish tank, because I'll just sit out there and check out all the birds. Whenever I see a new bird, I learn all about it. I'll contact Matt and ask him. And it's so I've got a big fish tank in my backyard, but so I've been keeping fish all my life, ever since I was a little, and yeah, I don't have too much. I could lie and just say like I've got like
because if they ever turn up at your house,
10
you'll be in
tanks.
so much trouble.
Yeah, I could do that.
Someone's asking, can you use a canister for salt water, or do you have to have a sump?
Okay, so you definitely can. It would absolutely not be my preference, and the reason why it wouldn't be my preference is that you're going to have limited redox potential, dissolved oxygen level and all that, because it's a closed system, and it's all relative to capacity. If you don't put a lot of fish in your tank, you don't need a lot of filtration. But if I had $1 for every person that said, oh, I'm just going to have a pair of clownfish, and then next thing you know, they've got 14 fish and 32 corals.
Yeah.
So it's really all about capacity. So you can run a tank on a canister filter, no problem. But you're going to be very limited with what you put in it. And you can lie to yourself and say, oh, I'm just going to chuck in a pair of clownfish, but you don't. You end up just slowly putting more and more stuff in until eventually you've exceeded the capacity of the canister filter, and you're really better off just doing it properly in the first place. Otherwise, get a nice piece of furniture like a cichlid tank.
Red Sea or Cade?
Okay, so I'm not really allowed to say these sorts of things.
No, I wouldn't either.
So they're both very good.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say, if I say anything, I'd probably say on just plain looks, maybe the Red Sea wins. On regards to longevity, as far as aluminium stands and so forth, maybe the Cade wins.
Both have a purpose, though, I think.
But they're both very nice, very good looking tanks.
Yeah. Have a question. Which would you rather, a shrimp-sized dog or a dog-sized shrimp?
I like this one. This is a good one. I don't even understand what he said. Yeah, I've got a turtle dog shirt. That's like one of my favourite shirts.
No.
A shrimp-sized dog.
Or a dog-sized shrimp.
I'm too dumb to even understand that. I don't know how much wine I've had, but is both an option?
Yeah, both. Let's have both. What's the best way to keep
I would actually like both of those things, like now that you've mentioned it. I've had fish, but now I want a shrimp-sized dog.
Guys, you'll have me looking for both.
Shrimp-sized. Can you even get a shrimp-sized dog?
Yeah, Gypsy's about it. Oh, no.
All right, if you get me one, I'd like one.
Okay, no problem. Best way to keep algae that can keeps your corals under control. It can be done using natural resources.
Okay, so Ned's just asking us to be a smart ass. I betcha. Okay, so the best way to keep algae that complete
with your corals naturally.
The best way to keep it.
Yeah, to deal with it. I think.
Okay, so as far as algae is concerned, so let's so I'm not sure that I've understood the question, but that's normal. So anyway, let's say that you go up to Cairns and you're standing at a river mouth, and then 500 meters up the river, it's full of algae. Then if you look out to the reef, maybe 500 meters out, and then there's basically no algae whatsoever. So it's all got to do with nutrient levels. If we have nice high calcium, nice high magnesium, nice high pH, if all your main elements are nice and high, then that's going to advantage the corals. And then if your nutrient levels are nice and low, such as your nitrate and phosphate's nice and low, and these days getting them low is really not that hard. It's really just a matter of making sure you've got effective nitrate and phosphate removal. And with some of the products, the no-pox products and that are available, there's so many products that are available now that are super effective. So you do need to use those carbon-based products in order to get the results you want. Otherwise, if you're going to rely on water changes, you really need to have not much stock. So algae is not your enemy. Algae is just telling you that your nutrients are picking up a little bit. And then if you just focus on your actual test results, and then algae just really isn't a problem. And a lot of times people get very committed to algae in their Refugium or something like that. But that really isn't the end game. The end game is not to see how much algae you can grow. The end game is how healthy and thriving your corals are. So with the dosing systems and the basic supplements that I run, in general, I just don't really have a big problem with it.
Okay, so Barney said he's working on a ship-sized dog, he'd prefer that. Aqua Reef 400 S2 or an RSR 425 XL?
Okay, so they are both, so Red Sea versus Aqua One. So they're sort of a different entry tank, I guess. So Red Sea really market themselves as much more of a premium line tank, whereas I'm not even sure the Aqua Reef 400 is still available. The new Aqua Ones look fabulous. The Cis, I've got them in stock at the moment. Maybe I'll take up people and show them, because they only came out. Yeah, I've got them up here. So the new Aqua One tanks only just came out today, I think. And so I've got them up here. So it's nice and dark. I know it's fine. So these are the new Aqua One tanks. And value for money, I don't have the prices on them yet, but they're so good. So if you're just looking for a starter tank, this is just tank, stand and sump. Because the old Aqua One tanks, like the mini reefs and stuff, they're fabulous value. But everyone always upgraded the skimmers and upgraded the lights and stuff. So Aqua One's gone and released the Reef Cis, which is a bare bones tank. And if you're looking for just plain value, you can't beat it. It's low iron glass. They're just super, super good value. So once again, it comes down to, are you looking for your forever tank, or are you looking for your good value, get started in the hobby tank? So as far as good value, get started in the hobby tank, I don't think you can beat I think those new Aqua Ones look so good. Whereas anyway, I've got to be careful with those sorts of questions, because you'll win friends and lose friends with these things. You say something's better and then someone loves you and someone hates you.
That's right. Every dog's different. Okay, so what would it cost to set up a standard 4-foot sump? I don't know if they want with a tank or just the sump.
Okay, so if just a standard 4-foot sump to run a tank, you're probably looking at, by the time you set it up, around $600-700. But if you did email me or whoever your local shop is, we can definitely give you an actual price. But very, very, very worth it. Any saltwater tank I would be running on a sump.
Best biofilter you would put in your sump?
Oh, well, that's without a doubt. My massive bias is on Marine Pure. And the reason why my bias is on Marine Pure is that the millions of dollars of research that Nanodynamics did to discover the perfect surface area to volume ratio of this media to allow nitrification, denitrification without anoxic bacteria is beyond the scope of the collective international aquarium industry, full stop. And all the other reason why I'm particularly biased towards Marine Pure, besides the fact my brother sells it, is that that I was the guy. I was actually over in Chicago when someone from the creator of Marine Pure came up to me at one of my seminars, because I used to travel around the world doing seminars back in the days before the internet, when DVDs were a thing. And I'd travel around the world selling DVDs and doing seminars. And he actually came up to me and said, we've spent millions of dollars to create this media that's going to allow parallel denitrification. Has it got any application in the aquarium industry? And I'm like, whoa, does it ever? That was like in the old days, that was like the grail, because we were trying to do deep sand beds, and we had Goman and all these people doing research into how to harness anoxic anaerobic bacteria without anoxic bacteria. Now what I'm talking about, let me just do a quick. Okay, so let's say your fish tank, just to give an example. So back in the old days, we used to use bioballs, and they used to just work with nitrifying bacteria, which means that we had fish food, and then the fish eat the food, and then we'd basically get ammonia, and then we would have a series of organisms and various bacteria that would break ammonia into nitrite, then due to various bio-life, the nitrite's going to get broken down into nitrate, and there are no single bacteria responsible for all this. It's a complex community of microorganisms and bacteria that perform these functions. And then basically the nitrate went up. Then you do a water change, it comes down, then it goes up. Then do a water change, it comes down, then it goes up. And that was banging. That was keeping a saltwater tank back in the day. Lots of algae, get less algae, lots of algae, get less algae, lots of algae. And that's what we did until Marine Pure came out. Oh, that's not true, because first we started doing live sand. So what we started doing then is, like, let's say we put a deeper sand bed in our tank. Then on the top layer of this sand, this bacteria that's going to form here, this bacteria. Then just under that, then this bacteria would form that's going to break this down. Then under that, this bacteria which would break that down. And providing that we could keep all this, so you have an aerobic state, which means there's oxygen available. We have an anaerobic state, which means that there's oxygen available in the form of, say, nitrate and, say, phosphate. And then we have an anoxic state. So if the inorganic particles keep filling up and the oxygen can't get down into this deep layer, then we form what's called anoxic bacteria. Now, anoxic bacteria sucks because anoxic bacteria discharges hydrogen sulfide, which is poisonous, particularly if disturbed. So what we were always trying to do in the early days, when we just realized that this is not so much fun, and we started to realize that nitrate could actually get broken down, and it could get broken down through a passive diffusion of bacteria. Then we started doing plenums, which is a little gap underneath the sand, and that allowed the oxygen to horizontally transfer as well as vertically transfer. So we tried to create this state of, and it was very hard for us to monitor. It was very slow to produce, and we really didn't have much control over it. And we'd make these situations, and we'd put that in a separate tank, and that would be a refugium. And sometimes it worked awesome, and sometimes it didn't. Until all of a sudden, Marine Pure came out, and Marine Pure instantly has the perfect surface area to volume ratio to allow the nitrifying, the denitrifying, and no anoxic. So that's why this is the media that and all the rest copy it. And they haven't done the research. Marine Pure have even commissioned separate independent testing on surface area to volume ratios and so forth on the claims of a lot of other products, and they're so far off, none of them are even similar. So ones that claim to have less have more, ones that claim to have more have less. So not only have they not done the research on the product, because they don't have the financial capacity to, it appears they haven't even really done the testing on it to figure out what their claims are. They just must, I'm assuming they just look at the claims of Marine Pure and then just make it up from there.
Do you know anything about Marine Pure having an aluminium problem? Aluminium?
Okay, so it does does it have no. Okay, so this was originally a big smear campaign. Now, first of all, the next thing is that nobody's saying that aluminium's even all that bad. So let's say, for example, does it have traces of aluminium in it? Maybe. Aluminium's going to bond with phosphate, and the trace levels that it may or may not be present is so tiny, it's really not a problem. So even if you go and get an ICP test and the ICP test is saying this level of analytics is so new to us, and we really just starting to understand it. So in regards to, is it a problem? The answer is absolutely and totally no. I have run Marine Pure in basically every tank that I'm involved in, and absolutely under no circumstances have I had any adverse effects whatsoever. So that smear campaign is getting tired, and at the end of the day, nobody is going to turn around and say their tank's worse for having Marine Pure. It just isn't the case. And I've tested Marine Pure on ICP tests, and on tanks that have got it, and I've had traces of aluminium, and I've tested it on tanks that have got it, and I have not had it, and I've tested tanks that don't have marine pure and it's got it, and I've tested tanks that don't have it and it doesn't have it. So I just think the whole thing is a non-event, and I do not have any issue with that whatsoever.
How much marine pure would you need for a Red Sea 500?
A Red Sea 500 for marine pure, you would probably just need one large block, but it is sort of the case that you can't really overdose it. I've never seen a problem from overdosing it, but one large block would pretty much get you out of the way. So the other thing I should just discuss while I'm on the subject is passive versus active. So if you have a situation like this and you have your marine pure here, I'm a bit retarded with making sure I'm looking at the right thing. If the water's getting forced through the media, then it's active. If the water's going around the media, then it's passive. As a generalization, active is better for the breakdown of nitrification, so ammonium nitrite, and passive is better for denitrification. So which one's better? A combination of both is quite good. Like you could put some there and then chuck another block there if you wanted to. Active, passive. So there you go.
Okay.
What's the next question?
All right, so there's a couple more questions. John Bailey seems to have crabs.
John Bailey has crabs. Yeah, I don't think it's a surprise.
Something about keeping corals. Here you go. What's the best trace element brand for keeping gony corals? Red Sea, A, B, C, D? Question mark.
Okay, so different supplements for gonies. Okay, so Goniopora coral, which is this one. Back in the old days, we used to find gonies would last maybe 3 months blooming, then maybe 6 months looking a bit, how's your mother's new boyfriend? And then after 9 to 12 months, it would be dead. And that's just how we used to roll, because back in those days, you just get a new one, because that's just what we did. Then we discovered iodine, and then we started dosing our tanks with iodine. And obviously the goni must be susceptible to bacterial infections, because we definitely found that when I started dosing iodine, I used to get the level to 0.06 or whatever it was, the level that they recommend. And then I would find that not only would some of the corals seem to make a bit of a comeback, but corals would definitely last longer. But they still did not work indefinitely. Then when products such as Reef roids came out, and then what they were teaching us is, especially with working with products like Polyp Booster, that the tiny, fine micro membrane needs super fine particles in order to feed. So the Goniopora's issue was really nutrient issues in the first place, and there's various products on the market now that seem to be very good. Reef roids is definitely one of them. Goni Power is definitely one of them. Reef Revolution's got one that's quite good. So they're sort of three that I've definitely played with, and I've found that they're really quite good. What else has got one? There's another one that I've got thinking at the top of my head. Easy Reef, they've got a good one as well. So yeah, there's definitely some really great products, and quite a few of my customers now are keeping Goniopora indefinitely, and it's fun watching the little babies pop off like popcorn. They're really an awesome, rewarding but challenging coral to keep. So they're definitely not something that I'm just going to go saying is for everyone, but it's definitely a achievable coral to keep now, thanks to the food and the presence of iodine supplementing, which seems to also help. So what other questions we got?
Okay, so George, back to the algae one. George asked if vodka would help with the removal of algae.
Okay, so dosing vodka would, you could drink the vodka and then you could just clean it yourself.
That's right.
So, or you could get, like, if you've got like a local junkie or something, you could probably give him some vodka and then get him to come and clean your tank. So that's probably a good way of, but yeah, anyway. Just, anyway, so I would rather use proper carbon source products like no pox than I'd rather drink my vodka, and I'd rather use and there's a lot of reasons for that. I've got a lot of videos on that particular subject. Yeah. And we have to, so we've got nearly 8:30, so
yeah,
we'll
it's nearly 8:30. Okay. So, Alana asked if the Nemos and the corals come in the box with the Aqua One tanks.
Oh, that's a lovely story, isn't it? What she's cracking on about at the moment is, I had a lady not long ago that was like really upset about how the Aqua One white tank came with clownfish and the black tank doesn't. So she honestly thought, and I could not convince her that the fish were not in the box.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
All right, let me see if we can wind up these questions. Okay, so can you migrate fish caught in the ocean into your tank? If so, how without killing them?
Okay, so can you migrate it? So let's not talk about the legal ramifications of this. Let's assume that you are legally allowed to do this. Then you definitely can. Now, so one of the topics that I really hope to cover, and we can make this a series, like obviously we've got quite a lot of people in here, so there's obviously quite a lot of interest. So yeah, we'll do this again very soon. And instead of doing like an all-nighter,
yeah,
we'll just do so just to be clear, we've got to there so far. We've got quite a list to make it through. So I'm going to say this is going to look like about a 4-part series,
yeah.
But that's all good. So in regards to let's just talk about that for a second. So let's say you went and caught a fish, and you put it in your fish tank. As a generalisation, if you've got a fair bit of money's worth of fish in your tank, this is a pretty crazy endeavour, because any pathogens that fish may or may not have, you've just bring into your aquarium. So you're really, if you're going to go partaking in that sort of activity, you really want to make sure that you've got a quarantine tank. Then you want to take water from the natural environment, put it in the quarantine tank. You want to give that fish a good month. Really care for that fish, make sure it's eating, make sure it's well settled in. Then towards the end of that month, you can slowly make sure that the salinity, pH, temperature is all exactly the same as your main tank, and then you can catch it out and throw it in the main tank. And you really want to have a good idea of what the fish is that you're putting in there, because if you go and catch a cool looking fish, it could be a juvenile of something that's going to grow into a terror. So you want to be very aware of what it is that you're putting in the tank. So this often ends in tears, and it all comes down to how much have you got to lose. If you've just got a pretty crap looking tank with no money's worth of fish, go for it.
Yeah.
But if you've got like an amazing tank and you spend a whole lot of money on it, then trying to catch a bream or whatever you're catching to throw it in your tank, it just really isn't worth the risk.
No, great. Top 3 marine shrimp.
Oh, okay, that's pretty easy. So my favourite 3 marine shrimp, well, by far, it just has to be the cleaner shrimp. I just love cleaner shrimp. They're just the most awesome little animal. They've got so much personality. They clean your fingernails. They clean your fish. They're worth every cent that you pay for them. So in Australia, you're going to pay a fair bit for cleaner shrimp, and that's because where they're collected is quite far out and quite far deep. So they've got to send a team of divers. They need to send them down quite deep. They don't get much bottom time. They're really, they're worth the money. Cleaner shrimp is absolutely my first one. In regards to other ones, a lot of them tend to be very shy. Like blood cleaners are awesome, but you're not going to see them as often. Hinge beaks look really cool, but you're hardly ever going to see them. Peppermint shrimp would definitely be another one. Lots of things seem to love eating peppermint shrimp, but I would say they would be my favourites.
Someone asked how often would you feed your gonny, and someone else has said they've never fed their gonny and it's doing really well.
Okay, so that's awesome, and I don't know how long you've had it for, but
2 years.
That's awesome. That just means your whole tank just kicks ass, and you're probably supplementing all anyway. So that's great. Not broken, don't have to fix it.
Yeah.
Now, as far as feeding the gonny, I tend to feed it several times a week. So just sprinkle a little bit of the food over the top of the coral. I'm not a big fan of turning off my pumps because I'm sometimes a bit dumb and I forget to put them back on. Yeah, so regularly. I feed them about 3 times a week.
Okay, which fish food or good for good colour and health? Pellets once, sunken clown does not eat.
Okay, so let's have a fish food conversation. So, the first thing I'm going to say is that fish keeping is 50% about water quality and 50% about nutrients. Now, how often I go to a customer's house and I test the water and the water's crap and the fish are perfect. And then I look in the cupboard and sure enough, Danichi, I would say, for pure performance, I would say this is the best food. For pure, just plain clean, a very good food. I'm a very big fan of the probiotics. Now, in regards to clownfish, in general, clownfish will thrive on this food. But sometimes fish train you. And this is very easy to say because there's no one size fits all, because you do just get fish sometimes that are just a pain in the neck, fussy little buggers that just don't eat what you want them to eat. So that's can be the case. And then other times it's just that the fish have trained you. So you might have gone and got some Danichi and put it in there, and the clownfish didn't eat it, and then you're like, oh, the little guy's hungry, I'll go back to what he was eating. So a lot of the time it is just that they train you. So if not, just be prepared for them not to eat for a couple of weeks. That just happens. And then when they're hungry enough, they'll eat. Then if they're seeing the other fish eating, that's a much higher chance of them eating. And then if they're eating like frozen food or something, sometimes if you want to get them onto something like Danichi or the Spectrum, you just got to get the frozen food, defrost it, rub it all together so it all sort of smells the same, and put it in at the same time. So they just get used to the consistency of it. And this very regularly works. But really, nothing works all the time. So really, what am I looking for in food? The first thing I want is not heavily processed. I love frozen food as a little bit of a treat. I am not feeding frozen food because I think I need to. Food like Danichi, which is slow cooked, which is not pressure cooked, is not heavily processed, is absolutely what I get the best results from. So the two go-to brands for me, with absolute bias in every way, shape and form, is Danichi, and I love the probiotics from Spectrum. And the reason I love the probiotics is the probiotic bacteria is good for the fish's digestion, but also when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. Now, as a guy that runs around cleaning fish tanks a lot of the time, like you wouldn't think I've owned a business for 20 years to be the dude that runs around and cleans the fish tanks, but anyway, that's life. So I'll have like a doctor or a dentist or whatever, particularly with those pieces of furniture like cichlid tanks. Then I will let's say I give the gravel a clean and so much crap comes out. I'll clean the filter, it's like putrid. Then I'll get them onto this food, and like within say 1, more so 2 months, when I clean the gravel, the bucket's like clean. I open the filter, it's like clean. It really does make a difference. I've got lots of videos on this on my channel if you want to check it out. But at the end of the day, fish keeping is 50% about nutrients, and they're my favourite foods.
Okay, so John Radcliffe wants to know if you want anyone for work, he wants a job.
Yeah, well, we've had that conversation. He doesn't want me to do what I would. Actually, that was a joke, but I didn't even get it.
I don't want to know.
I didn't even get that joke.
All right. Best way to clean sumps and marine pure. How do you clean marine pure?
Okay, so this one. So, how do you wash your balls? So, marine pure comes in balls and it comes in blocks. So, how do you wash it? So the first thing that you don't want to do is go and hose it. So don't take your balls outside and hose your balls, because you might damage your balls. You've got to be very gentle with your balls. So what you do is you just get a bucket, take a bit of water out of the aquarium, put your balls in the bucket, then just massage your balls until they're nice and clean. And once you've got all the crap out of your balls, then you put them back in. And then if you've got a block, you just dunk it. So you get your bucket, dunk the marine pure in, dunk it a few times till all the crap's not coming off it anymore, then put it back in again. And then I'll do that, I know, at least once a year. And then I will do a spring clean on my sump at least once a year. I would basically get everything out, give it all a clean, get all the sediment and all the crap out of the bottom. Either by siphoning it out, which is not a reality most of the time because the sumps are usually on the ground. Otherwise, I'll drain the water out and I will get a fine net and suck it all out, flush some water through it. I'll clean all the impellers in my pumps. So I pretty much try to give the sump a good overhaul once a year at least.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Last few questions. We're running over time now.
Oh, yeah. Is there an upper limit to tank turnover?
Yeah, okay. Is there an upper limit to tank turnover? Okay, so one thing I've learnt is it's surprising how much water flow a tank can take. So there definitely is. Like, we don't want to make it a washing machine. So as a guide, I'd probably say look at around 20 times an hour. And I really want to make sure that my aim is the surface. So back in the old days, so this surface is what I want. I want all the surface being nice and agitated. And what I don't want to do is blow it across the reef. So very often I'll see like a pump like here, and it's blowing down the reef and just closing everybody up. I sort of love it on the back here, so that way it's pumping forward. I'm getting lots of agitation on the surface. I'm getting plenty of gas exchange, and it's going off and away it's going. So the answer to the question is, can you have too much water flow? Definitely you can. It's extremely rare. Normally it's the case that there's not enough. Then it's really just a matter of watching the animals and watching what they're doing, and then if they're getting bashed around, turn them down, because these days it's very fancy with our little just turn it down. So it's important to know what the corals should be doing and to react with your position of flow or intensity of flow. Oh, look, an Aquarium pen. That's, never seen that. That's
Come on.
very exciting. Okay, as we should get this wrapped up, I think.
Gobies compatible with pistol shrimp?
Yeah, well, gobies and pistol shrimp. If you get a pair of gobies and pistol shrimp, awesome. You want to buy it like a matched up pair. They're unreal. There you go, Chris. There you go, Shane. There you go, me. All right.
Are you talking about tanks or your balls?
Or your balls? No, I use tanks as an opportunity to talk about my balls. That seemed obvious.
So your wave makers are included in your tank turnover rate? Yeah.
Oh, okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So tank turnover is overall tank turnover. So I want at least 20 times. That's sort of if you're going to...
Including your wave makers, though?
So that is the turnover of the tank, which is predominantly the wave makers. I don't need heaps of water going through the filter. So if the water goes through the filter 4 or 6 times, that's awesome. But I don't want it zipping through too fast, or it's going to be too noisy, and I'm going to get decreased contact time. 4 times, 6 times, and I'm happy. The rest of it, I'm making up in the actual tank itself with the power heads. So if you're going to shoot for an aim, I'd say 20 is pretty good. But in regards to the way you set the tank up and that, how varied the tanks have been that I've experienced is pretty extraordinary.
Last question.
Last question.
Aptasia. How do you tackle aptasia?
Oh, aptasia is fun. Okay, so aptasia, so little pest and enemy, and I guess my favourite way of killing it is with hydrogen peroxide. So there are various safe products on the market that you can use. Aptasia X being one of them, but it's just something really fulfilling about killing aptasia. You can squirt peroxide on them. I find that works really well, but you've really got to know how to dose it. You've got to start off with super low doses, otherwise you'll bomb your tank and kill everything, which isn't that fun. I've got lots of videos on my YouTube channel about how to use peroxide, how to dose it, and then using Copperband butterflies. But peppermint shrimp are another very great way of getting rid of aptasia.
Everyone's saying thank you. Send me aptasia. I have a Copperband that loves it.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's wrap this up. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. We've had hundreds, millions. We had like millions. Yeah, there was like millions, like at least 150.
Do you want to do this once a week or once a fortnight?
I don't know. Let's not commit.
About it.
Not commit to anything right now.
Okay.
I'll do it regularly anyway because I had a good time. Didn't get through as much of my wine as I thought I'd get through, but too much talking. And keep it classy.
Yeah, keep it classy. Thanks, Paul. See you Sunday with the coffee.
All right, guys. So anyway,
Thanks for that coffee.
feel free to shoot us an email if you get more questions. Paul at majesticaquariums.com.au. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. And we'll see you guys in the next checking out. Bye from Rebel.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. Part 1. So I've got a few more parts to go. Oh, but then we can go into other fish. We've got like billions of parts. We've got lots. Oh, we've got to turn this off. All I did was change the thing. Well, lucky we didn't swear or anything. It was spinny show. Yeah, lucky we didn't do that.